It was the rematch that nobody wanted, which became the rematch nobody could take their eyes off. And I'm not talking about Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. This is After the Bell Mirror Fightings Boxing Show with me, Martin Domin, with Barry Jones and with Declan Taylor. I am, of course, talking about Derek Chisora and Joseph Parker, who renewed their rivalry in Manchester on Saturday night. It went 12 rounds somehow. Joseph Parker won. We'll come to that in a moment. But Barry, actually, I want to speak about Derek Chisora first. We have this conversation, I think, every time he fights. But I just don't know how he keeps doing it. He was down, well, he was counted, I think, a couple of times. Actually down just once, I think. Kept up by the ropes a couple of times. Took a batting at times. Somehow got through the 12 rounds. On one hand, I want to say incredible, amazing. But again, we're left just thinking, what kind of toll is this taking on him?
Yeah, well, you would see now we're all a little bit more aware of issues with longevity of careers. Then you tend to think, what's he going to be like when he's my age, 31, and he's to be fair, I know I'm an old man, but he's not far off my age now probably. But how's he going to be? And you worry about, because the older you get, everything slows down. But with boxing and taking a lot of punches, all that deterioration increases. It has a faster process, so you worry how he's going to be. That's for sure. But if we were that conscious and if we had that with empathy, we wouldn't watch boxing at all. Let's be honest. So let's take it for what it was, and it was a fantastic fight. Again, the third rematch this year that we didn't know no one wanted to see. They sold it to us like they sold the other two, the Fury Wilder 3 and the Arthur Yard 2 fights. These are fights we've been clamouring for, and they weren't. But we're so glad we saw them all. And last night, again, was just epitomises what Derek Chisora is about. Technically flawed, massively technically flawed, but he has that innate toughness that you just can't just factor into anything. How he can just keep... There's very few fighters, especially in this era, for a long time, that can take punches that really hurt them. I mean, hurt them to a point where they could go down, but yet continue to come forward. They don't know. His first point of call is not to protect himself; it's to fire back. It's to try and hit you back, and that is something that's got him to where he is. And yet he's an enigma. We know him for his losses, not for his wins, and that's the truth. He's had some good wins, but all the good fights, and he's been in some fantastic. He's been in some stinkers, by the way. And I covered his early career, so I know I covered most of the boring fights that he's had. I mean, when I say boring fights, I mean you're working commentary and you want to walk and go home. That's how bad they've been. Some of them, they've been awful. But then, typical Chisora style, there's no middle ground with Chisora. He's either fantastic to watch or horrible to watch. And last night, it was fantastic. It really was. And Parker was a lot better, but you've got to give Chisora the credit for making the fight, because he got hit so many times, so hard, so often, but yet just kept coming forward. And I don't know how he does it. But it'd be better now next year. But if not, I think 2030 will be his year.
we do always look back, Declan. We look at this sort of whatever chapter he's on in his career, and we do admire his renaissance, if you like, not only in the ring but also suddenly as this fan's favourite. Who wasn't particularly liked early in his career, often because of the fights he was in, but now he's loved wherever he goes. And it's great. But you look at the fights he's been in, the two with Dillian White, the fight with Carlos Takam, okay, he won it, but it was tough. Usyk, Parker again. And last night, it was, he would be well down in a round, being badly beaten in a round, but he wouldn't just recover. He'd come back and finish the round on top at the end. And as I said, it is a great spectacle, and we do appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody there appreciated it. But you just want somebody, do you not, to just say, Derek, you're not doing this for us. We don't want you to keep putting yourself on the line every time. It's time to just think about this for a minute.
Yeah, but there's a big problem with that, and that is Derek Chisora will answer to nobody ever. There's nobody, even his family. There's nobody who's going to put an arm around him and say to him, "Enough's enough." Even like his old dear, I don't think. She's very close to her. I don't think though. Her saying enough's enough would say. But to be honest, it's weird with him because you would think if he was in a position where he was shot to bits, some of the shots that he got hit with last night and like the uppercut that dropped him, there would be no getting up from that. Do you know what I mean by that? We've seen fighters come in and they get hit and it's like they're made of glass and then, right, that's over, they're done now. That was one of the, like Barry said there, that was probably the most he's been hit in a fight ever. I can't think of another fight. Like the Takam one was pretty heavy early on, but it didn't go on for 12 rounds. Like the Fury rematch, he got peppered, but not, and he got pulled out of that, so it wasn't 12 rounds. That was just hellacious. It's almost like he somehow gets tougher. I don't know what it says about Parker's power, but what it does say about Chisora's chin and resilience, he's made of something else, isn't he? And that renaissance you talk about, Martin, like Barry will know from those early Box Nation shows, he couldn't sell a ticket. He couldn't sell a ticket. Who wanted to watch him? There'd be no one there. I remember when he boxed Edmund Gerber for the European title, I think it was, at the Copper Box show. There's no one. Yeah. I remember covering it. No one there. And it's like, now he's this cult figure. And it does say something about what people like in underdogs and people like madness. Actually, I think he's clearly a little bit mad. I've covered him for years as well, obviously, because he's in London and me being based in London as well. And you never know what you're going to get in an interview with him. You never know if he's going to try and like kick you out of the gym. You never know whether he's going to give you an hour of his time. You never know. He's so unpredictable. And I watched a clip the other day of the presser. Remember the presser, the Prograis Taylor one, where he's saying that he's not fighting unless he's top of the bill. And it was just, that is just one tiny little thing that he's given us over the last, 10 years of madness. There's not another story like it in British boxing. I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I know it seems everyone, there's a pile on today and last night that it's enough. Enough's enough. He's doing it too much, but I don't think anyone could tell him otherwise. And he tweeted that last night. I don't know if you saw, but he said, "I'll be back in the summer, bitch." And it's like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what anyone says, and you will be back. And you know what? People will watch it again. People will watch him against. He's still a draw, and he's still an attractive name to have on your record for probably 10 heavyweights out there. It would benefit them from fighting Derek Chisora in the summer.
He doesn't, to be honest, he's had a resurgence in his career and it's been fantastic. I've never been a fan of his style because it's crude. It's just, that's all it is.
You never seem to mention that one.
What's that?
You never mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I know it's an exclusive, but there's not a lot to like about him except how brave and tough he is, which is plenty to like. But yeah, where does it end? But I just feel that now he's in the Indian, and he's having a fantastically Indian summer that's dragged on longer than his actual career itself. The money he's earning now, how can he say no? I can understand it. No, there's never too much money. I don't think there's never enough you can earn, especially for boxers, because most boxers come from nothing, of course. So the more they get, the more they want, and they want to continue to do it. And all this is a short career. I don't think that applies to people who are earning millions anymore, because they've earned millions, but he wants to top it up and keep topping it up. So someone offers him £1 million now, like he's not a top tier heavyweight, and he never really has been a top tier heavyweight. He's always been a guy who can give a top tier heavyweight a bit of trouble, but never really beat one. And I don't really see Joseph Parker as a top tier heavyweight either, to be fair. He's just a level below, or maybe another level below that. But he was better on Saturday night as well, I thought. And I think that was the difference with how the fight went. He was a lot better, sharper, stronger, pretty much better in every department, I think. And he wasn't so tentative. He knew Chisora was going to be on his chest. He knew Chisora was going to be tough and hard, which he obviously always going to be. But now he'd been in there with him, knowing what something's going to be like, but actually experiencing it are two different things. Once you experience it, then you definitely know what you have to do to make the adjustments, and he did. And he was a clear winner for me. There was only one fight in the race. It's weird with Chisora because he wasn't in the races at all on the scorecards in my mind, but always in the fight because of the way he is and how he's adapted and learned. The way he sits, the way he walks himself to a corner when it's quite clever and silly in equal measure. He walks himself to the corner, that looks like a mission of surrender, by the way. So the referee, you could blame the referee at some point going, no, this is enough, because he's almost walking away. But his legs are unsteady, and he's a big lump, so he puts himself in the corner so he can sit on the middle of the rope and turn his body away. So it's not obviously turning his body away because he's in the corner, where if he sat square on the rope and he turns his body away, it looks like he's turning his back. So he sits in the corner and then puts his shoulder on the corner, so he only gives you one side, quite clever, and he sits on the back rope to keep his legs steady. Fantastic, really. So like, I think I've seen it before, like years and years ago, someone do that, and I was trying to think like this morning who it was, and I can't for the life of me, without scrolling through YouTube. But I remember I had another big heavyweight from many years ago, before YouTube were born. You know, it was they would sit down, they would do that sort of sit and use the corner of the ropes, to keep them steady, and I kept him in the fight for a few times because there was more than once where he was really looking to go. He was out of it, and Parker just needed to have a sustained attack of quality, and he couldn't quite do that. But it was thanks to Chisora again. Like as in all his defeats, there were good fights. He made it the exciting fight it was.
I think what you just described there as Chisora is maybe the number one at maximising what he's got, like the raw materials, the amount of money he's made from what he had and what he's in terms of ability and talent and all of those sorts of things. You put it all together, and then by how many big fights he's had and how much money he's now making. There's no one like it. There's no one who's done it like him, and he's such a good businessman like that. And you would think he wouldn't be. You'd think it's because he's quite out there and eccentric and stuff. You might think that side, but no, he's always been watertight on it, and you have to admire it. You have to admire it.
And he's a poker player because he'll. I mean, the way his life is, because he'll say to someone like Eddie Hearn, "No, I want this amount," and you go, "No, I'm not fighting it," and he'll like stare you out, won't he, for it? Or he'll wait you out, and most boxers will go, "Oh, come on," and they go, "That's what's in the pot, mate. You take the money or you don't," and they're like, "Oh, let me get back to you," and the promoter knows the fighter's going to take the money almost every time, unless he's a superstar. But Chisora's not the superstar. He's not the A side in most of these fights, even though he's a big draw, obviously, for pay-per-view. But he's happy to wait you out. He's that sort of. He's so unhinged that he would risk $1 million or $2 million, whatever he gets paid, $3 million, whatever. Who knows what he gets paid? Millions of pounds just to get his own way. And that's how do you deal with something like that? You end up giving in, don't you? Because he's whether you like him, whether you think he's good or whatever, whether he's the best. He's nowhere near the best heavyweight in the world, but he's one of the most marketable, and that's it may be what's wrong with the sport, maybe, but that's what it is. And to be fair to him, he's created that himself. No one's done it for him. No, he was put in as the opponent when he left sort of the Warren sort of camp. Really went over to the Hearn camp. He was really an opponent for Hearn's heavyweight, and rightly so. A tough guy who loses on the biggest fights. So if you're good, you're going to make it. You'll beat him, but it'll be a good fight. And he's carved another career for himself by doing that and beating some good prospects, some good people on the way up, but losing in exciting fights most of the time.
We'll come back to what Derek might indeed do next. But Declan, I guess if the fight was going to be different to the first fight, it was probably up to Joseph Parker to do something about that. Were you impressed with what he's presumably developed in the 7 months since that first fight with Andy Lee?
I was very impressed with Parker last night. I thought he's always had that speed. He's always had hand speed, but sometimes not a lot on it. He's not the biggest heavyweight in the world, but I think he's starting to. There was more on every punch, and he's starting to be a bit more economical with them. I thought Andy Lee's work in the corner was really good as well. Really good instruction, told him exactly what he needed to hear, and really clear, like, tactical things that he needed to hear, and he went out and did him. I think he's only going to get better. Like you say, what was it, 7 months? So he hasn't had that much time with Andy Lee, and I think it was a clear improvement. Barry said it earlier, it was obvious that he was so much better than he was in the first fight, whether Chisora's sort of dipped as well, but it was clear that had happened in last night's fight, that Parker's gone up and Chisora hasn't. I thought it was one of his best performances, actually, Parker. And I'm with you, Barry. You don't see him troubling the top tier guys anymore. Like when he won his world title, it was kind of a strange situation with the WBO. He would never have beaten Klitschko for it, for instance, or Fury. But I think he's got some exciting fights in him, and I think he's improving in the areas where, like, he had some obvious shortcomings as a heavyweight, and I think Andy Lee's clearly working on him. And last night was the fruits of that. And I think I was sort of losing the desire, because there was a time when he was a real exciting heavyweight for me, very young, and obviously he was over there and he'd beaten everyone, beat Andy Ruiz or whatever, and then he sort of stagnated a bit as far as I could tell. But I feel like he's back again on the rise, and I still think he's nowhere near the finished article, which is always good.
I would say that. I think there's loads. The good thing about him, there's a scope for improvement. So there's loads to work on. I think he can get better. And and that was a physically tough fight, but not he didn't have to. So he didn't have to dig deep. He didn't know there was no panic in that fight for him at any stage really. It was physically tough. There was no real like, oh, I don't know what to do here, or I got hurt, or it wasn't a war of attrition for him. It was for Derek. And again, the jab is the heavyweight. The jab is so important. And you want a fast, fluid jab if you've got one like a Fury, or if you don't, then you want a solid left hand, and not quite Lennox Lewis type because he had both. But you want to step behind him, get used to weight, and he did that, and I think that was the difference. And then because he was doing that, Derek was going low, and that's where that uppercut was coming through, and quite effectively. So they obviously, they're forcing Derek to go lower than he wants to go. Going low is always a good idea for the shorter fighter, but they were forcing Derek to get a little bit lower. And knowing Derek throws from too far out gives you the scope to throw that jab and then get a proper turn from your hips and your shoulders to make that uppercut a little bit longer or a little bit faster, because you get that little bit of a like the short fast twitch fibers when you turn and you whip the uppercut through the middle, and that's what worked for him quite well. That was his best punch of it. I felt, to be honest. That's the shot that Derek couldn't defend against, and when it hit him, he was visibly hurt from that.
Seems remarkable to be talking about scorecards after a fight like that, but 2, 4, and 5 rounds to Parker, which means that one judge presumably thought Chisora won the fight if you take out the knockdowns, and actually it wasn't. It wasn't. It was very close on the other ones. It's strange.
That card is maybe the worst of the last few years. That is.
Oh man, you should. We've had some fantastic scorecards. Are you sure?
That one was absolutely crazy. Like, I rewatched the fight this morning. Like, you could make it 10-2. Like, it was not even remotely close. And like what you always say, Barry, it doesn't mean that the fight's not competitive, but it was not even a hard fight to score either. It wasn't even like there were swing rounds in there. It was so obvious, and you just think how nobody cares this more. Actually, people do care, but because the right man won, and it's fine. It was a unanimous decision, but it's just such a bad look for everyone. Luckily, a lot of people who don't really understand boxing might have just watched that last night, wouldn't really understand the problem there, but we do. We do, and it was a bad one of the worst.
But the worry is, we talk about when Chisora going to say enough is enough. He'll look back at that.
He will
look back, and you look back. Some people look back. I look back, and I'd just be critical of myself massively. But he'll look back probably and go, "I did this well. Look at that. Oh, that was good. If I would have done this, everything would be positive spin." But then he'll listen to the scorecards and go, or even just hear the scorecards when he goes back to the changing room and go, "Oh, if I didn't get knocked down, I would have won that fight." And then why wouldn't you keep on? All of a sudden, you didn't get hammered like we thought, and just show immense toughness to get through it. You were in the fight and winning, but you just got caught with 3 good shots. And one of them, you'll go, that wasn't really a knockdown. The one against the ropes was a clear. That kept you up. The other one kept him up as well. But he could argue that, no, I just fell back and I was going to be okay. And all that. So you go, I really got knocked down once. So those 2 shouldn't have been knockdowns. And listen, boxers with the biggest liars on the planet. We lie about weight, money, are we conditioning? And you have to convince yourself, to get in there and to come from where you come from to be a world champion. You're constantly lying to yourself all the time to give yourself that self-confidence, which produces real confidence. I might be babbling here, but I love a babble. But look, he'll lie to himself that he was in the fight, that he was winning the fight, and then why wouldn't he carry on after that? He did it with the Usyk fight. A couple of people thought he got totally schooled. Most of us thought, but the narrative was that he got robbed, and so why wouldn't he want to carry on? That should have been the end of his career there, really, in many ways. This is it. This is the end of you now, because your earning potential's gone right down the pan now. That's what it would have been for the other fighters. But no, they just put a narrative that he got robbed, that he got ripped off, and he stuck to it. And his friends and people around him who were influential in the media and so on, or certainly on broadcast, they went on about he got robbed, or then they changed their mind. He was very close, and it wasn't. And that might happen for this fight as well, where we'll see a third one now, because Derek won the fight and he got harshly judged with 2 knockdowns that weren't real knockdowns, but they were. If the ropes keep you up, that's a knockdown. Because without the ropes, you go flying through on the floor, and that's and everybody knows that. But it shouldn't take away from the enjoyment of the fight. The right man won, and the scores weren't great, but the right man won, and it was a good fight to watch. And let's not worry about that. I think we're all looking for issues and problems. I think that is the issue and the problem, and we're looking for them. And I just think it was a great fight to watch. Let's just enjoy it for what it was. But this is the last time we'll see Derek until next time.
It's difficult for Joseph Parker given the situation with the belts. There was some talk of a final eliminator with Filip Hrgović. I guess it depends what he wants to do. But should Dillian Whyte lose to Tyson Fury next year, that seems to be a rematch that could feasibly be.
It's another one. It's another one, isn't it? It's that the zone, went on about game changed and stuff, and it's not, because it's like that. We had that fight before. Like, we've got to get that. If we get Parker White, it's literally just like, what did we used to do? Can we get it? But I think that's a good fight. I don't see, if they make the White Fury fight, I don't see White having any chance of winning that in a month of Sunday. So he'll be that part of Parker fight is a good sort of comeback from that. Hrgović is great. Like, these are named. The problem at heavyweight is that he's sort of been there already. And now you've got established champions who are really good, and then you've got young guys who are coming through like Hrgović, and you just think, if he can beat a Hrgović, then that's a real statement. But you almost feel like, what's in it for him? What's in it for him? Going and getting beaten by Hrgović or even fighting him. But I think he'll still make money, but you just know they're going to do the White fight, don't you? You just know it.
But that's all it is, though. They're just money-making exercises, and it stagnates the sport, because all these rematches against these fighters who have been around for a long time and are earning good money, and I don't begrudge that at all. Brilliant, fantastic. But they're out of the fighters. Joe Joyce has been sitting on the sidelines for ages. Well, there's a fight for Parker, Joe Joyce. Because that puts him right in the rankings again, by the way. Hrgović and for Dillian Whyte, Joe Joyce, Hrgović, Jared Anderson, all these guys, they might be a little bit not ready yet, but they chuck these fighters in. Because if Dillian Whyte does lose to Tyson Fury, then he becomes that level below, the top few. And then with Parker, so I think he might be the better one, but still, they're on that level. Give these young fighters opportunity to beat them, to make them better, so they can challenge.
Yeah.
So you get the young stars challenging the established champions, rather than people on their way down, fighting people on their way down to keep their ranking higher, and keeping all these young talent, potential superstars. You keep pushing them down, not allowing them the opportunity to prove themselves. That's how it feels. I don't know if that's what really is happening, but that's how it feels. And that don't help the sport. You've got to give these young kids a chance to go, not chuck them in opportunities when they're not ready. But you can't tell me, I know he's not a young man, but you can't tell me that Joe Joyce is not ready. Hrgović is on the cusp. Jared Anderson for me will be fast-tracked, I think. He needs one test of his chin, and he'll be fast-tracked. So there's fighters out there who need to be, their progression needs to continue, not stunted, because all these fighters want to try and fight each other and earn enough money before they sail off into the sunset. And I think about the sports health, not the boxers' health. Not health is a bad word to say. About the sports survival rather than their careers. That's how you look at it. Because I don't think we should care about how much money each fighter. Let's just presume we all want fighters to earn millions of pounds. because we all want everyone to be successful, but ultimately, we're fans of the sport. I'm not a fan of any fighter more than the sport itself, including my own career, by the way. I love boxing more than I love my own career. I love boxing more than I love any fighter, except for Sugar Ray Leonard, of course, because I love him. But apart from him, everyone else can go get lost. No, I want to see good fights and competitive fights. And I want to see the sport grow, and the sport grows by producing new stars, and that's all. And that's the truth.
I do think Parker is an attractive proposition though, because he's not a massive puncher, and also he's obviously a former world champion, so he's a name. Also, he's not scary, is he? No, he's such a nice guy. He's not scary. So I think people he'll always get fights because he's not in the who needs him club. He's sort of the opposite. But actually, he's much better than people give him credit for, and he's a much harder fight because he's so fast and he moves a lot. You just got to ask Anthony Joshua. You know, he's one of the only, apart from Usyk, Parker, the only guy he didn't hurt in their fight in the whole of Joshua's career. Like, he's not. But I think he'll get good fights, and I think that's why that, like, Hrgovic and the like will go, well, he's not a dangerous man, but actually, sort of fight could win.
Yeah.
Coming back full circle then, assuming Derek Chisora doesn't want to become... I was trying to get through the whole show without talking about the bridgerweight Alan Ravage. How does Derek, presumably doesn't want to be a gatekeeper?
I disagree. I disagree. I think he knows exactly what he is, and that is the elite level gatekeeper, proper gatekeeper. And I think he's happy to play that role. And I think that he would be happy to take the money to fight anyone who, like, you know, as in the role of a gatekeeper. I was with you, Martin. I thought, and to be honest, if you told him, it'd probably chin you. But like, I thought he would never. That's not what he wanted to be. But I think he's just looking at his business opportunities. Like, sweet, this young guy wants to have a go. Like, not a problem. I'm here for it. And that's why they're all for now. There's no way he's going to retire because there's too much money and there's too many potential fight. Like Alan Babbage, like. That would be top of the bill. Mate, I'm telling you, that would be a top of the bill fight on his own. No problem. No problem. Even in 6 months or whatever, like, I'm serious. Not the one that I would want to see, but, well, to be fair, I would want to see it, but yeah.
Well, you would watch it, but if that's changing the game, then we're playing the wrong game.
Well, yes, exactly, yeah. No. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you, Barry, but I'm not struggling for opponents for Chisora if I was his manager to
no, there's everyone again. All those young kids I mentioned. If they know that he's a great name in any career and any record. He's a great name to win. He's a beatable fighter who's dangerous, of course, but you beat him, it elevates your status. It gives you a big payday because obviously he's not a star on UK TV for boxing, and to elevate your status. It's a good career win. It's a great learning fight for you. It's a dangerous fight. Tells everyone about what you're about because he'll push you to the limits when he's on song. When he obviously, Chisora we've seen in the past can be unmotivated, so that's the worry with him, and he can just go through the motions. But if he generally tries to win, then he can push you hard. But also he's very, very beatable, and that's just a fact. Chisora's I work with a guy called Dave Rogers, good commentator, by the way, and his motto his mantra is, if they have the money, I have the time. Regarding taking work, he'll do any work. He works with me, so he'll work with anything, like you guys. But he literally that's Chisora. If you've got the money, I've got the time. That's his mantra for his career. If you pay me, I don't care who I fight. And I mean, he boxed a flyweight and beat him up for the sake. If you paid him the money, he wouldn't care about looking like a bully. He's one of those, like, he don't care. He boxed Clarissa Shields tomorrow, he wouldn't care about the whole uproar about boxing. Women and men boxing in the same ring. He goes, if you pay me 3 million, 5 million, I'll fight anybody. And I think he would. You watch him now, he'd be fighting horses and all that. And he'd be changing the game. Game changed.
But if you see that, like, there's two names that would sell out the O2 in June: Daniel Dubois or Joe Joyce. You ain't even got to leave London. There's two fights there you go that would sell out, that everyone would watch, and he'd make a load of money from, and no one would be worried about it.
And then the A side for pushing forward but commercially, he's the A-side.
Exactly.
So,
Who else?
yeah.
Like, there's not many people you could stick Joe Joyce in, or Dubois, actually, because I've been at some empty Dubois fights as well. There's not that many heavyweights out there that they would be able to sort of sell out or sell a reasonable number of tickets.
Yeah,
against.
true.
You stick Chisora in the pot, straight away it's an attraction, and you have to take your hat off to it, and that is why he's still here.
But again, though, we're all saying, listen, if he walked away tomorrow, because how many punches can he keep taking? How many half fights can he keep having? But we're already now selling fights that he could be in, and I'm getting rather excited about a guy who I'm not a fan of, because it's technically not great, but thinking, oh, that's a good fight. That's a good fight. So if we're doing that, what's he doing? Because he's not just thinking that's a good fight. He's thinking that's a good fight. 2 million. 3 million, 2.5 million, 1.5 million. And he's had the net, he's thinking, 5 fights, just like 15 mil, 12 mil. Without boxing, I'm going to fight Fury, Wilder, even Dillian White. In his mind, I'm boxing these young kids who are untested. They might spark him out, but they might not, and that's the thing. And he'll nick a win now and again, Derek. That's the thing with him, and that keeps him relevant. Listen, he could be the last man standing, ironically. He's the only one we talk about should be maybe packing it in, because he takes a lot of shots. But he might outlast them all. I think he has that sort of, I don't want to call it greed, but that, he's savvy financially, that he just thinks, I can earn fortunes here from what? From training, getting fit, and doing 12 rounds against some kid who I don't care. He's just genuinely unhinged, isn't he? So he doesn't care. That's the thing. So yeah, his future's sort of bright, and it has been for a long time. In defeat, his future continues to be bright.
Now I'm left wondering whether we will be living with COVID or living with Derek Chisora for longer. I'll leave you with that question. That is all for this week, and that is all for this year. Hopefully, well, thank you for joining us this year. Please do have a good Christmas and a good New Year. Until next time, do take care.